How you doing?
Doing all right.
Good.
Glad to be here.
It's good to be here. Welcome to the Houston Vineyard.
It is nice to be here, yes.
Last time we did a video, we were in your house.
Is this true?
So now we're here. And for Houston Vineyard, Trinity Vineyard, we're excited to be together. And what we want to do today is share a little bit about what partnership has meant for us over this pandemic and how God has shown up in each of our churches and in us as we've decided that it was better to work together than to cheer each other on from a distance.
Right.
So I'm going to introduce myself for those that don't know me, and then you do the same.
Okay.
I'm Josh Harder, and my wife Danya and I and our 3 children, David, Gabriela, Amelia, moved here from Mexico City 3 years ago in July and took over the Houston Vineyard. And so we've been leading this church for the past 3 years, with a little bit over a year of it being pandemic. So super fun. And so we're new into Texas, new to Houston, new to the area for the vineyard, and then we became friends.
That's right. And my name is Mike Lehmann. I'm the pastor at Trinity Vineyard Church out in Cypress, northwest suburb of Houston, about 30 minutes from Houston Vineyard Heights here. And so I have 5 kids. I have a senior, a junior, a freshman, a 8th grader, and a 5th grader. And all those grades are all about to be bumped up 1 year. And we have been at that church now for almost 17 years. We celebrated 15 just before pandemic. And so the last year and a half or so has been a whole different animal, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So.
And you guys planted.
We did. We planted out of the vineyard in Sugar Land, which was a home church to us. We came out with about 20 people or so from that church.
And Sugar Land planted out of the Houston Vineyard.
That's
and
right.
So we're all cousins? I don't
Something
know.
like
We're
that.
related.
Yes.
Yeah, and so what's been great is, I got here to Houston from planting and pastoring a vineyard church in Mexico City, city of 26 million people. We were the only vineyard church.
Right.
And so I got here to Houston, and there's others. You guys have there's other vineyards. This is amazing. And so we started hanging out, having coffee and talking, and your friendship has been an incredible blessing to us as we've transitioned our families to a new culture, a new city, a new reality. And because of that relationship, when pandemic hits, we were talking pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Because like you said this earlier, and I loved it, there wasn't really a game plan for this.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we were walking through, there was no book or web page or manual to go to. What do we do about this thing? What do we do about that? How many people do we allow to that? How do we respond to this? It was just nonstop, almost every other day, based on what the news was saying. We had another decision to make. So having someone to bounce that off of was just absolutely necessary, crucial.
It's am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. We're all crazy.
Right.
And I think the reality of it is, we get into these rhythms of planning things out, whether we plan them weeks, months, or years ahead of time. We sort of got into this place where we're having to plan things daily, like a day out. We can barely do more than a day out.
Yeah.
And as we realized that we were sort of duplicating efforts in places that it made more sense for us to do it together, we started partnering.
Yeah.
And so I remember the first thing was kids.
Yeah.
And so Jill Lively and Veronica were doing the videos for our kids, and Rachel Blanky's there, and you guys are trying to figure out, we're trying to figure out. Yeah. And we just said, why don't we just do this together? Yeah,
that was it was hard enough to get our churches to go fully virtual. Then on top of that, we have to figure out how do we provide ministry to children in a virtual environment. And so to be able to come together and work together to put together something really good, like an amazing experience for our kids to connect with God and to learn and to have lessons that had an order and a structure and to share the load between the 2 churches. And I don't know exactly, it's been almost a year that we've been doing that now. Yeah.
And what I love about it is not only what it produced in the sense of opportunity for kids to be connected to the story of the Bible and Jesus of the Bible, but also for our Rachel and Jill and Veronica, and now we've had Jill retired in the middle of this, and we had Jessica come on, and Amanda has stepped in to help in a lot of ways. for the camaraderie of that,
Right.
to not feel
You're not alone.
you're not alone,
Yeah.
you're not shouldering the burden. So it's one of those things that has become not only a blessing for each of our communities, but really for our, like, the people that are working together.
Yeah, right.
And that was like the first foray
Yeah.
into it, and it was like, okay, we can make this work.
Yeah, and that's even transitioned to some in-person things where they now do these outdoor
Yeah.
nature events, and it's continued to evolve.
Which is, again, this way of us seeing how we're connected to this bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I think was like some worship stuff.
Yeah.
Where we did.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those like things that really was born out of our conversations, right? So is it okay to gather?
Yeah.
Is it okay to meet? And at Trinity Vineyard, we had sort of come to the conclusion that we weren't going to meet inside, but we were comfortable with attempting to do some outdoor events where we had maybe a lot more green space than you guys do to spread out and sit out in the field and worship together, and to invite you guys to come and not only attend, but to help lead worship at those things, and to just provide something of an in-person presence was huge in those early months of responding to the pandemic.
And for us, it was this amazing thing because, like, doing or not doing things is very often unrelated to our desire for it, but is more connected to our ability to actually do it.
Right.
We would have loved to do it, but we were not in a place where we didn't have the space that we could do it. We didn't have the resources, whether that be the equipment we needed, and so being able to say, okay, you guys have some space and some resources, we have some people that can come along and do it together, was this wonderful way to say, okay, it's not all about what I can do, it's about what we can do together.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful because it was also at a time when, like, this will seem like ancient, but nobody was doing anything.
Right.
I mean, nobody was outside,
Yeah.
nobody was inside,
Right.
everybody was at home. And so this gave this first, like, sort of breath of fresh air for people
Right.
to be able to worship together.
Yeah.
And then that sort of moved into doing Christmas Eve, an online sort of experience, which not only were Trinity and Houston Vineyard, but then we also had the privilege and blessing of having Rodolfo, who was from Mexico City. He was up here, and so 3 churches from 2 countries doing this together.
And not just worship people, kids from both churches came together to share the Christmas story and have kids I saw for the first time to record that Christmas Eve service. Many of them, they had grown several inches since I'd seen them last. Yeah, so that was great.
Yeah, which sort of has continued on because we did a sermon series together.
Right.
And Rodolfo and in Vereda in Mexico, they walked along with us in that series. We studied together. We were able to lay it out. And then we were able to take what we sort of did together and apply it for the needs of our communities in the way it made sense.
Yeah. There was something really kind of oddly comforting to know that whatever text we were discussing that week or topic we were exploring, to know that there was another church living through the exact same crisis that we were living through, trying to navigate it and proclaim God's truth to people trying to figure out life and how to respond. And yeah, that was such a great experience.
It was great. And if I'm honest, it was also a relief not to feel like, man, I've got to come up with 12 weeks of stuff when it feels like we're going week to week right now.
Right.
So to be able to say, okay, this stuff coming together, and it was, again, the camaraderie and the friendship and relationship to be able to do it together, sort of dividing the weight in a way, was amazing.
Yeah. And for me, one of the highlights, which that Somos series built up to, was our sunrise service, our Easter Sunday, on the rooftop here at the Houston Vineyard. That was such a powerful, well done presentation that you and I weren't really that involved with. I know you recorded a talk after the fact, but your volunteers, our volunteers came together, put together. It was like a piece of art. And I had people commenting and viewing that from all over the world and being encouraged by it.
It was beautiful. And it shows sort of the profound impact of deciding to that we can do this together.
Yeah.
Because so we see the kids ministry doing together, we can see the worship thing, but the behind the scenes things, the fact that our tech team who are trying to figure out live streaming and audio to live streaming, things that we have never thought about, are able to sort of talk to Matt Blanky and say, hey, can we come learn what you're doing? Can you help us out? And then being able to produce something together where we're actually learning from each other and supporting each other. And it was again, if we would each had tried to do a sunrise thing, neither one of us would have done anything relatively close to as good as what we could do together.
agree.
And so like it's sort of this compounding interest of together, it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
And then even in, I think one of the cool things that is probably the rarer form of partnership is youth.
Yeah.
And the fact
Right.
that Kelly Barron, who's our youth pastor and is amazing in so many ways, lives pretty close to Trinity.
Right. Yeah, and just due to pandemic-related issues, our youth leadership wasn't able to lead early on, and so me being a father of 4 youth, I felt like it was an urgent matter
Like we got to do something.
to provide something for my own kids, and in addition to all the other kids at Trinity. And I basically just expressed that to you. Man, we're in a pinch here. We need help. We're in a pandemic, and our youth are out there just floundering around. And yeah, you mentioned Kelly.
And it's one of those things, I think this is a good example of where the relationship comes in.
Yeah.
Because in that, if Kelly's sort of leading youth in 2 different places, there could be a bunch of stuff that happens. The human nature of territorial things and
Yeah.
but just saying, okay, we are committed to relationship together because we think it's modeled in Scripture. It's the way of the kingdom. It's culturally relevant to the kingdom of God, and it's good for our souls. And if it's good for our souls, and it's honoring to God, and it's part of His kingdom, it's going to be good for our communities.
Yeah.
So we'll do it, but we'll talk a lot.
And our communities overlap.
Yeah.
And I think about teenagers in my house, and then Kelly serving here at Houston Vineyard. My daughter plays on a basketball team made up of all girls from the Heights.
Yeah.
And so they're youth and they live in the same city. They live in the same community, even though we're 2 different churches that are 30 minutes or more apart. We share relationships, and our kids share relationships. Our teenagers share relationships in the areas that our churches dwell in and live in and serve in. So,
And they're not
just makes sense.
overwhelmed by the fact that, oh, you're in a different. It's like, oh yeah,
Oh yeah, right.
we're in this together.
Yeah, right.
So there's been we did a joint Sunday,
Yeah.
which was
Where you
at
came out,
Trinity.
back when we were both exclusively live streaming.
We were only live
Yeah.
streaming, and we figured out, like again, Matt and the tech team at Trinity and our guys figuring out how to
Push it
send it
to-
live to 2 different places,
That's right.
and
It's a lot, Josh. We did
we
a
did
lot.
You know
We did
what?
a lot.
We're pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.